the maize potential in this country. If you imagine the farmers in Kitale who used to produce 30 bags per acre, and today they are producing 15 bags to 10 bags per acre. It's like our production has gone into half, and the land is a fixed asset. It's not increasing. So we need to unlock this and get to know why is the production the way it is. Lilian has put it right and said that we are not using fertilizers properly. There is a lot of talk and blaming DAP as a result for spoiling or damaging the soil, which is not right. What has been happening is that farmers have been using 1 bag of fertilizer, 1 bag of DAP, and expecting to get 30 bags of maize, as they used to get in 70s. If I may give an example of how soil is, I would say soil is like a fat bank account. If your dad, a rich dad leaves a fat account to a son who is not depositing but withdrawing, with the time that account will be depleted. Or if this son keeps on withdrawing more than he is depositing, at some point he'll have an empty bank account. That is exactly what has happened to our soils. We started with a soil that was rich in organic matter, had all the nutrients, and we started using 1 bag of fertilizer. Then that 1 bag was enough because the soil had enough nutrients. As we planted one maize using 1 bag and getting 30 bags of maize, by and by we were withdrawing more than we were depositing in our soils, up to a point whereby we have depleted those nutrients in the soil. And now 1 bag of DAP cannot be able to produce 30 bags. Now take, for example, if we look at the business perspective of that. If, for example, production of maize is produced at an acre, you would use a rough rate, if I may use an estimate, and I give a figure that is not very far away from the truth, you spend about 5,000 shillings to produce in an acre of maize. Now, one farmer may use that 5,000 to produce 10 bags. So if that farmer produces 10 bags, the cost of production per bag will be 3,500. So this farmer will be striving to get a price that is higher than 3,500. And then you'll be asking the consumers to cough about 4,000 shillings for that bag. Another farmer spends the same amount and produces 30 bags. This farmer will have produced the same bag of maize at 1,200 shillings. This farmer, if he gets a price of 1,800, which to me is a reasonable price, he'll have made 600 shillings per bag. And that is good profit when you're talking about maize. So here I've been able to demonstrate it's actually not the price that has a problem. It's actually not the glut that has a problem, because when we sell maize, when farmers are selling maize at 1,800, or government is saying that it's going to buy maize at 1,800, farmers usually complain and they say that is not, cannot take that price, because they want the consumers to pay for the efficiency.
Interesting analogy there, Bwana Ndegwa, about the fat bank account and withdrawals. So you are as an agribusiness advisor, why do we continue to experience cases of maximum residue limit and exceedance of harmful pesticides, in food? Can we say you have failed in your role?
I would say that I haven't failed. Basically, what happens is that when these cases of maximum residue levels appears, and mainly in this country, in our situation, they don't appear because we haven't done enough in terms of analyzing, or we haven't set the standards for, let's say, the maximum residues allowed in a tomato, for example. When Ridomil or Mancozeb has been sprayed on it. So mainly in EU country where such analysis and we have those standards, they're more advanced in that. But I would like to mention something here, that when the MRLs were set, they were actually set with an objective to get to know those who were not using chemicals appropriately. And the best way to use chemical, or the instructions on how one can be able to use chemicals appropriately, you don't have to go to school, but you just have to look at the label. If you pay attention to the label before you spray, you ensure that you are following the dosage rate. And there is something called PHI. PHI is pre-harvest interval, or the number of days that one has to allow, or the days have to elapse before a sprayed product can be harvested for consumption. What is happening is that we have some rules in our legislation, whereby in this country, the persons who run the agrochemicals are not, we could be having a law in place, but the discipline of ensuring that those who sells chemicals over the counter are qualified enough to advise the farmers. That's where we are losing it again. So anybody can go and start an agrochemical.
Okay.
Start selling.
I see. That's quite dangerous, I think.
Yeah.
Hello?
With no competence in terms of telling the farmers the dosage rate, or reading the label for the farmers, for that matter. Because if we could put in place stringent measures that those people who are selling chemicals in agrochemical shop must be qualified agronomists. They could either have certificates or diploma or degree. People competent enough to advise. Then these issues of having chemical exceedance in the products that people are consuming would be done away with. Because if a farmer uses, for example, Ridomil on potatoes, on tomatoes, and observes strictly 7 days, and use the rate that is stipulated in the label for the dosage rate, exceeding MRL will be impossible. I have an experience whereby we are starting customer in the UK requested us to be selling products at we did not actually adjust the dosage rate. We sprayed normally, we observed the dosage rate, the PHI, and everything. And our products actually passed the 70% threshold without doing any effort. So I believe that the manufacturers have set the rules, proper guidelines. But if
is it about implementation?
It's about the implementation. And
on the part of the government or the private sector?
I would say it's the government, because if it is a rule is passed that there'll be no chemical that will be sold by people who are not qualified.
Thank you so much, David. Because of time, let me move on to my sister Nekesah, who will be talking about post-harvest losses. And for a long time, value addition has been touted as the solution to post-harvest losses. We have come up with several technologies which can help us, preserve food and value add and all that. But we continue to see high rates of post-harvest losses. What's going on? Nekesah? Can you hear me?
No,
your mic is off. Oh yeah, no, yes, you're welcome.
So maybe what I can talk about in terms of post-harvest losses is generally what actually causes these post-harvest losses. And when we look at post-harvest losses, we are looking at things starting from the farm. When the farmer is harvesting, how are they harvesting the product? If you're talking about potatoes, if you're talking about tomatoes, how are they actually harvesting these tomatoes? So when we are talking about the horticulture, especially, which are high value and very perishable, we are looking at things like mechanical damage on farm. So you're looking at if they're harvesting the potato, if they use the wrong equipment to harvest the potato, then you're looking at bruises on the potato. If they just picked the tomato the way it's not supposed to be picked, then you're looking at also bruises on the tomato, the skin. So that's where the post-harvest generally starts. So on farm, we are looking at on farm. Then technically, if you're looking at also horticultural products, we're also looking at removing the field heat before you even transport the product. So when you're transporting the product, you don't just harvest it and put it on a crate and then take it out. There are processes in which you actually reduce the field heat so that you stop it from over ripening as you transport the product on its way to the market. So there's the process of removing the field heat first before you take it to the market. But I think the problem we have with our farmers is that you want to harvest sukuma wiki today. Okay, sukuma wiki is perishable. Let me talk about tomato. You want to harvest tomatoes now and have them in the market, say overnight. So that whole issue of putting them together, there's the heat that is being generated. There's the way they've been packed in the crates before. There are specific crates that are supposed to handle different products. We are just lumping our cabbages together. We are throwing all the tomatoes in one big truck and transporting. Then the issue of also logistics comes in. We don't have a cold chain supply to be able to transport our products from the farm to the market, or maybe when we're exporting them. So this is really a huge challenge when you're talking about the infrastructure. So from the farm to the market, even in between the logistics, it's a problem. And we are also looking at the cost of even installing a that cold chain. It's also very expensive. The technology is there, as you've mentioned. Why is it that the technologies are there, but we are still having problems? The technology is there, yes, but the cost of just having the cold chain from the farm to the market is also another challenge. Most of these products are not very affordable to farmers. And you find that either you're a big farmer, like the commercial farmers who can afford it, or you're working in a group where you can actually either rent the cold chain supply, maybe a truck that has a reefer, or just ensuring that you have the right temperatures when you're transporting your products from the farm to the market. So those are the challenges that farmers have. Then the other thing is we're also looking at pests and diseases on farm. Sometimes David has touched on the agronomy part in terms of the sprays that you do as a farmer and all those things that you have to do prior to your harvesting or having a ready output for the market. When you don't control pests, some of those pests lay eggs in the products. So when you're transporting them, they're hatching. And by the time you reach the market, the product is no longer a product that you can sell. So that is already discarded as a loss. And you see, that's already a post-harvest loss. We also have some diseases that you can carry within your products. If the diseases are carried within your products, if you're exporting, definitely it will not go through. But if you're selling in the local market also, if I go to pick a vegetable that doesn't look healthy, I might not be able to buy it from the person selling it to me, because it's already a loss to the person selling. And also those who select the products look at some things. Is the vegetable leaf looking presentable for me to sell? Those are the things that they look at. And if it's not presentable, it has been eaten maybe 50% of it by a pest, then you see already that's a loss. And when you're looking at production generally, if you're not going to sell whatever you've grown, then already that's a loss. You've already categorized it as a post-harvest loss, because when you put in whatever you're going to put in, you've already costed it. So at the point of the farm, all the way through logistics, up to the market, we experience a lot of losses. I'll pick a value chain like the mango, for example. Just looking at the mango value chain itself as a whole, you find that we are experiencing, they say 50%, but I believe it could be more than 50% of post-harvest losses in mangoes. And it's not only because of lack of market being one of them, but lack of market is partially caused because everybody harvests at the same period, at the same time. If you're talking about the mango season in Kenya, it's very definite. You know that between December and March, there are mangoes. Between this period and this period, there are mangoes. So it's definite. So we're experiencing a lot of post-harvest losses because of high supply, also low demand at that particular time. As farmers, what do we do to ensure that you're not producing when you're not supplying the market when everybody else is also supplying the market? Because chances are, if you supply the market when everybody else is, then you're going to get a lower price. What does that mean to you? You're probably losing out in terms of the price, the profit, or you leave your products to rot in the farm. So there's a lot of things that causes all this, despite the technologies available, price being one of them, logistics being one of them, policies. And we're talking about logistics, we're talking about the infrastructure behind it. And when we're talking about infrastructure, definitely we're talking about policies. We know there are policies that have been put in place to ensure that there are some, value addition processing plants in various regions of this country where we have key crops that are targeted. But again, the issue of capacity comes in. Are they at full capacity or just operating at the minimum? So there's so much that goes on around the technologies that are utilized in terms of value addition that really could make value addition and also post-harvest losses go at its minimum. Also, if you're looking, yeah, sorry.
Okay, is that your last point? You can go ahead.
Yeah, so I was also going to mention that when you're looking at value addition to curb post-harvest losses, we are looking at various factors, various processes. During our forefathers, there was fermentation that used to take place when it comes to vegetables. That was a value addition, just to ensure that you're using vegetables maybe for a month without it going bad. We also looked at drying of the product, and drying a simple way is one of the simplest ways of actually preserving and value adding your products. And when you're drying, you don't actually need to have a big machine to dry, just investing in a big machine. People are using solar, and solar is actually very popular. We are blessed in the sub-Saharan Africa. We are right on the equator. We have enough sun. So we could look at solar as one of the key, value addition in terms of drying. We also have, or drying or dehydrating. Basically, when you're drying, you're dehydrating, so you're removing moisture. Then when you're looking at other options that probably are a bit high-tech, we are talking about freezing, dry freezing. Those are the things that are coming up now that could probably elongate the shelf life of some of the products. And when we go high-tech, then of course we might need government to come in, or probably financing to come in. We might not really talk about funding, because when you're doing a business, you're generating profits. So we should look at financing, either through equity, venture capitalists. There are people who are willing to put in money in agriculture. We know there are some who are quite interested, but again, the risk in agriculture is quite high. So it depends on who wants to finance. Banks are a bit flexible these days. So we are looking at also financing as one of the problems that farmers are having in terms of value addition, getting the right equipment to invest in such processes.
Nekesah, very briefly, I'll imagine that, for instance, if I am a potato farmer and I've done it for 5 years, chances are at one point of my, farming practice, I've been taught how to probably uncover the potatoes in a way that they don't, get injured, get those wounds and get, but why are we putting it in the category of logistics, which clearly rests in the hands of someone else? A farmer has to understand their skill on their own so that they get to worry about what is beyond them. How come they do not know? Is it a problem with reaching out to them and imparting these skills?
I think it's more of capacity building. There you're saying the knowledge. Some know, some don't know. And the fact that also our extension services are sort of devolved, and they are more like demand driven rather than, extension officers going out there to train farmers and tell them what to do. I think that could be a problem in terms of getting the information out to the farmers. They would know on the farm how to preserve it. But then after that, say, for example, if this farmer has to be paid their potatoes on delivery, so if anything happens between the farm and the delivery, they would not know what caused it. So they need to understand what are these problems that are being caused, the post-harvest losses that they incur between the farm to the market, so that they're able to understand, generally what happens. Then they could mitigate that on farm before the products leave the farm.
Thank you very much. Let me move on to Jane. Jane is also handling a very important section on extension investment. Many a times we'd like to crucify extension officers for not reaching the ground, but it's really about the government. This was stopped like in the 1990s, the extension services. And since then, the extension has been an haphazard activity with multiple players and philosophies causing more confusion for farmers. We want to know whether agribusiness advisors are part of the problem or the solution. And we, in that, while on that, we want to know the tales that agribusiness advisors are taking advantage of farmers, and what is the status of the field as at now. It's quite deep. I hope you got everything that I said, Jane. Your mic is off, Jane. Jane, please. Your mic is off.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's now on.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're quite right. After the implementation of the structural adjustment programs in the SAPs in the 1980s, the government was under a lot of pressure to reduce its dominance in the economy. So budgetary allocation to especially extension was reduced without considering how that gap is going to be mitigated. And now, with agriculture being devolved, the problem is even compounded. We have not been hiring extension officers for a while now, maybe about 20 years. The extension officers that are on the ground are aging out and they're not being replaced. And there has been, therefore, a gap in provision of services. So since nature doesn't like gaps, private sector has come in to fill that gap. Unfortunately, we are not very coordinated. So you will find input suppliers offering extension services, but only for their products. Then you'll find faith-based organizations also jumping in because, for example, there is a faith-based organization that advocates for plain organic farming. Yes. Then you'll find export or produce-oriented companies. They will offer extension services only for the area that interests them. For example, if it's French bean production that needs to be improved, they will offer extension services. So everybody is telling the farmer something that we don't know what it is. And now the farmer sometimes gets a lot of information. I'll give you an example. There's a farmer who had gotten about 4 people telling him how to use fertilizer. So there was the national government extension service that had told him to use DAP, 1 bag. Then there was the county government that had told him that in this county, we only use 1 particular fertilizer, so use this one. Then the faith-based guys had gone and told them, no fertilizer, use whatever natural something that you have. Input suppliers, some of the fertilizer companies had also been there. So you can imagine this is the same farmer that is getting all this information. And therefore he'll either overuse these inputs or underuse the inputs, which it's both scenarios are very detrimental to production. So there is need for coordination. And I know that the government has come up with a policy, an extension policy. It's not out, it's been released, but it's not very available to all of us. And then even with that, since the government, both county and national, are pulling out of offering some of these services, private sector is being looked at as the next person to offer this service. How do they offer it? Because where you go, you need to have a remuneration. So who will pay for your services? How do we cost this service? Because it has been a public good. How do we cost a public good, especially to a smallholder farmer? So these are conversations that are going on now. There are some development partners who are helping in the process, but what is coming out is that extension will have to be a PPP, a private public partnership. Otherwise, we shall not achieve the extension service, the advantages of it as it is envisioned at the moment.
Okay, as advisors on food safety, how do you set standards for what is safe food and what is unsafe food in the market?
Now, yes, standards actually offer some uniformity in production. There are two types of standards. There's the quality standards and there's the food safety standards. Quality standards will give you access to the market. Food safety standards will have now started being a paramount because consumers have now started agitating for safe food. And when I say consumers, there are some consumer-based organizations, yes, but mainly government also. We are coming up with a standard for Kenya for horticulture called the KS 1758. Now, as advisors, we are supposed to use this standard to ensure that the farmer is producing his produce or her produce efficiently, and at the end of it, a safe product will be availed to the market. Now, this standard is still under development. It's in the tail end. We also have a system for traceability, the National Horticulture Traceability System, which is also under development. The basis of it is actually farmer registration, which again, it brings in all other issues. So it's really a government, as I said, it's a PPP. Government needs to put in place a policy that will allow private sector to operate in the counties so that some of these standards and regulations can be activated. And then if we look at the particular standard, I can see somebody had asked about seeds. The standard actually, it doesn't tell you what, for example, what seed to use, but it makes sure that you have considered the quality of seed that you're going to use. You've considered the quality of soil because you have tested your soil. You've considered the quality of water that you're going to use. You've considered the quality of personnel that you're going to use because you have to make sure they are competent and also have undergone training of some sort in the area of expertise. They will also ensure that you are following the legal requirements within, there are country requirements that you're supposed to follow. For example, you have to be tax compliant, you have to follow environmental standards. So a standard will make sure that you consider all these requirements before you even start producing. Then it will consider hygiene standards that you're supposed to produce under. Now, our advisors, especially on the market access side, need to be appraised on these standards so that as they go out, they will have enough information to pass on to the farmers so that there's no multiplicity, there's no duplication of roles. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you all for that insightful discussion that we've had and a great outlook into the sectors that you specialize in. Very quickly, we would like to go to the Q&A session where the audience will be asking questions to each and every one of you based on what you've talked about. So, Bwana CEO, is it okay if I read the questions that participants are asking?
Yes. So I've taken note of the questions. Maybe okay. I could help there.
Kindly. Yeah,
Anita. So let me start with a question that came from Jackson Kiptanui, and this is pretty open to the entire panel. But his question is it that we have very few agronomists to support farmers, or is it an issue of agronomists being very expensive in terms of their service or the cost of their services, so that farmers cannot access these services? Because what you have described is pretty powerful in terms of a package that farmers can use, but what is the problem? How come farmers cannot access your services? And linked to that is a question, what can be done about agronomists who are attached to agrochemical companies and may be biased in the advice they give because they only advise on the products that they sell, yet those products may not be optimal? So Jen, maybe you'd want to say something about that. Maybe just take a note of that. Lilian, there's a question that has been directed to you on soil acidity and also land rejuvenation. What can be done to get the soils back to the yields that David had mentioned earlier? We also have a question that I believe, Lilian, you can answer, about hybrid seed in sustainable production and pest and disease control. What is your opinion about the use of hybrid seed in supporting sustainable production and pest and disease control? Maybe we can start with those three questions, and then we'll take the next three as we move on.
Jane, you can maybe start us off.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, extension service has now been left in the hands of private sector, and we can say we get paid by whoever. We say whoever pays the piper chooses the tune.
Calls the tune.
So so if I am paid by an input provider, I will make sure I make as much sales as possible. Now, to mitigate that, again, what I mentioned was that the government has published some guidelines, 2017 extension guidelines, which we shall make available for all extension people. And also we have a system called the National Register for Certified Crop Agribusiness Advisors. In short, we call it NROCA, which it's an idea that we came up with to make sure that it's a membership-based register. So when you're on it, you sign on a code of ethics. So once you sign on that code of ethics, when you go and advise a farmer, you have to be careful what you're going to say to that farmer, because you are answerable to somebody that is vetting you. So the issue within the advisory service is that it is uncoordinated. And the coordination, yes, it is necessary and it is coming. We have a bill, I think, that was introduced in Parliament, that was the advisors bill, agricultural advisors bill. It has not gone very far, but it is coming. So we aim to work with this, whoever is in charge of national advisory services, to make sure that whatever is brought forward for us to follow is actually applicable to all of us equally. So that's the best we can do, so that, again, everybody must sign on to it and sign on to the code of ethics. Thank you.
Wanjiru, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you for those very, very good questions. There was a question on lime. There was a question on how to rejuvenate our soils. And I want to handle those questions together. So like David mentioned, soil, it's like a bank, and we need to take care of it. So what has happened over the years is that we've been growing crops with only two nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, and we've not been replacing the nutrients. So what has happened is that our soils over time, because we are removing all the basic cations, have become, most of the soils, especially in the western parts of Kenya, and even some parts of central, have become acidic. If you look at a soil map of Kenya, you'll realize there's several parts that have their soils have become acidic. Now there is only one solution when it comes to dealing with acidity, and that is liming. Liming is a key way you can address soil acidity. There is no shortcut to it. And for you to be able to do proper liming, you need to do soil analysis so that you can be advised on the quantities that you need to do liming, to lime with. Now, the challenge farmers face is once they're given the quantities, it's too huge. How do I apply? It's a lot. what I tell farmers is you don't have to do it all at once. You can split this to several years until you get your soil back to a pH level that is good. Now, the second thing that we need to do so that we don't go back to where we are now, it's taken years because our soils were very fertile. People took advantage of that, but now our soils have. Can you guys hear me? I'm seeing like
yes, we can. Go on.
Okay. Yeah. So so I was saying what we need to do next is we have to do what is called balanced fertilization. We have to understand the right fertilizers to use for each crop and give all the nutrients. Plants need at least 14 key nutrients to grow. And so soil analysis again becomes key here, because then you're able to know what nutrients your soils are missing and what to replace. Now, the other thing that we do advise people, I've seen a question on someone saying, oh, someone told them DAP is not good, you only need to use organic manure and all that. What we advise farmers, you need to do what is called integrated soil management practices. That means you integrate both, where you need organic matter. It's a very, very key resource when it comes to nutrients and storing nutrients. So you need to do, if we can encourage farmers to do what is called integrated soil fertility management, that means you use both organic and inorganic inputs if you can. The other problem is that we remove everything, and like where I come from in Kitale, we burn up the residues, which is a very bad practice. That is nutrients we are burning up. So we need to return that into the soil. The other practices when it comes to rejuvenating our soils is we have practices like conservation agriculture. That means you don't completely till your soil. There are three principles. There is minimum till, there is cover crop, and there is crop rotation. So those are practices that we need to educate our farmers to start using to rejuvenate our soils. Now we need to understand that where we are, it's taken us a long time to come to where we are. It's going to take patience to bring back our soils to where they need to be. But it has to be an effort. We have to have that willingness to do soil testing. We have to have that willingness to do things the proper way so that we don't mine nutrients out. Then there was a question about hybrid seeds. Yeah, there is no, I mean, it's obvious. I think it should be, hybrid seeds are very key. I'll take an important sector that that is gaining a lot of, let's say, potatoes. People are being told to use potatoes that are the correct types of potato seeds. And that is making a huge difference in terms of yield. So hybrid seeds are definitely important when it comes to maximizing productivity. And then, like I said before in the beginning, we have to look at the whole value chain. It's not just soils. Once you make your soils, of course, you need other inputs to be able to reach maximum yield. So of course you need the proper seeds, you need the proper fertilization plan, and then you need the right agrochemicals to be able to control the diseases and the pests. And of course, if we need irrigation, and all those things are available.
Thank you so much. Rikki, were those all the questions, I believe?
No, we have the next set of questions. So let me just go very quickly. This first one is directed to Nekesah, and Nekesah, the question is, how are we encouraging farmers towards value addition? And could you give us some simple methods or examples of reduction of field heat at the farm level? We also have a question on whether we or you as agribusiness advisors are aware of any plans by the government to put in place cold storage facilities for vegetables in rural areas. So Nekesah, those are some questions directed to you. To David and to Jen, there are some two questions here. One is, can agro dealers or agrovets be trained to provide over-the-counter advice? And how applicable is the KS 1758 standard to smallholder farmers in Kenya? So let's have some quick rejoinders to those questions, and then we can move on.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Those are very important questions, and considering the value addition and the value chains basically for crops. So when we look at just basic ways in which a farmer can reduce field heat, first of all, when you're harvesting, if you're harvesting your crops, make sure you have a place that has a shed or even under a tree or something like that, something that will prevent direct sunlight hitting the crops. And do not pile them up. When you're harvesting, do not pile your output, whatever you're harvesting. Just ensure that they are properly put under a shed, and also or under a tree if you don't have a shed, if you're not able to afford to construct a shed on the farm. Just to ensure that you're not having that direct heat hitting your crops or whatever you're harvesting. Then if you have some little capital, you can invest in a charcoal cooler. Charcoal coolers are basically what most farms have, especially those who are doing commercial farming like French beans. They take their French beans, harvest them, and put them in the charcoal coolers before they are taken to the grading sheds, and then thereafter for packaging and export. So we need to have some simple things or structures that can help us on farm to be able to remove that field heat, because that is what actually causes a lot of the post-harvest losses, especially during transportation. If you can afford it, you can hire reefers. These days, they are available on lease or even on rent. If you're doing a lot of products as a farmer or as a group, you can rent that reefer for transportation. There are some companies that are doing that kind of business. You can rent that so that you're able to reduce your losses as a company or as a farmer or as a group. Then when we talk about value addition, encouraging farmers to do value addition, I'll give you a very simple explanation about value addition. Taking mangoes again, or even tomatoes. If you take 1 kg of, for example, if you want to dry 1 kg of mango, you'll need about 10 kilos of fresh mango to dry this. If you calculate about 10 kgs of fresh mango, typically a kg has about 3 mangoes. So if you're doing 3 mangoes, then for 10 kgs, about 30 pieces of the mangoes. And you value this if you're selling fresh, then you'll be getting about, during the high season, 1 mango costs about 5 shillings. So you're talking about 5 times 30. So this will give you about 150 shillings. But if you dry the same 1 kg or you dry the same 10 kilos to give you 1 kg of mango, you're talking about selling it for between 1,000 to about 2,500 per kilo, depending on where you're selling your product and how you're packaging it. So even if you removed your cost of production of producing these, the dried mangoes, you find that you're making a profit out of just drying. So why wouldn't we go that way? Plus, if you dry during the, what is it called? During the peak seasons, you're bound to sell the product when there's no, say, no mango. Like during this time, I'm personally eating dried mangoes during this time, because getting the really good mangoes, the fresh ones, they're not available in the market. So I'm eating the dried mangoes because I bought probably when they were drying, so I can keep them for longer. The shelf life is longer. So just getting this information out to the farmers to understand that if you value add, just the next step, if you're value adding, it doesn't necessarily have to be drying. You could be doing something else. You could ferment the vegetables. You could, dry the maize to a level whereby it's not attacked by the pest. What does that mean to your produce? You keep it for longer. You sell it for a better price when the market is really, when the market has no, high supply of the product. So we are encouraging our farmers by sharing information. And I would want to echo some of the one of the questions that was asked by one of the people attending the talk, is that we as okay, there are people who are agronomists, but then there are those who have targets. But then if you're practicing agronomy, then you're bound to give the right information to the farmer. So when you go out there, you have to give full information to the farmer, give options to the farmer. If your product is not working well as an agronomist and you're selling for a company, then take that feedback to your company and get a better product to the farmers. I think we all live by feedback. So if we get feedback that the product is not working well, then we improve on it and probably even refer some of, competition is there, but it's also complementary. That's what I always say. It's complementary. It's not necessarily competition, but complementary or supplementary products that would probably help the farmers to better their production, you know. So because if you take out a product that is not working to the farmers, trust me, you'll not get that sale next time. But if you give the correct information to the farmer, giving the, you know, building that relationship, they'll trust you even in the products that you'll sell as an agronomist in the future. And then for cold storage facilities in the country, there are there's the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy. It lists very well what plans they have from 2019 to 2029 in terms of value addition. I would encourage all of us to read it. And it states that they're going to create 6 processing hubs, very big hubs. I believe these hubs will also have cold storage if they're targeting horticulture. And if they're not going to have cold storage, maybe we can push for that we can push that they have cold storage, because that is very important. But also there's the NARGIP project. I am not sure how far it has gone, but I believe they were having the county approach, and this is the National Agricultural and Rural Inclusive Growth Project, where it was actually devolved to several counties. It was working with about 15 counties or so. And in these counties, they identified various crops or value chains they are going to move with. And it was actually the people, the farmers, who are contributing and saying, we need cold storage, we need a processing plant, we need this. So we, as the people who are participating on the ground, we need to also go to these meetings and state what we want. So if we want a cold storage, then we tell the people in the ministry that this is our urgent matter. So I believe also the NARGIP project is going to set up in some areas, the cold storage and places where farmers can take their produce to keep overnight before they transport it to the market. Yeah. Is there anything else I've left out?
Yeah, I'll address the question on agro-dealers and the KES 1758 for smallholders. Yes, they are doing that now because, again, as I said, nature doesn't like a vacuum. So there's a vacuum at the moment. So the agro-dealers have been trained there's a training system by the AAK that are actually equipping these agro-dealers to offer this training, but they also need to sign up on a code of ethics, because what we have realized happens is a supplier, an agro-dealer, will go and maybe entice the agro-dealer to sell more of his product at a commission. So again, whether the product works or not, the agro-dealer will it because he wants to be paid higher commissions. So yes, there's those issues. The best advisor would be an extensionist, whether public or private sector. But yes, agro-dealers are feeling that gap. It's better than having nobody. So KES 1758 for smallholder farmers, it will be very expensive for each smallholder farmer to implement KES 1758. It's better if they aggregated, got together, got common facilities. The costs are shared, because what KES 1758 aims to do, yes, it makes things efficient, but there's a cost to it. So we advocate for farmers to get into groups. It is easier to implement KES 1758 that way. Thank you.
Great, Anita, I believe those are all the questions answered. There was just one, well, it was more of a comment on finance, but we do have some of the participants saying they are able to support in the area of finance for agriculture. So I guess as we move into the winding up phase, we will talk about how our participants can engage not just the panelists, but even on future webinars. So probably Anita, I'll hand back to you so that you can take us into the closing phase. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Bwana CEO. And thank you for those very pertinent questions. I believe those who asked them are going home happier. So as we draw towards the closing, there is a question that I would wish the panelists to address as they give their last word on this. And this is really about how the public and the private sector advisors, agricultural advisors, can work together to achieve sustainable research, and extension intervention supporting producers and value chain actors towards achieving food security. How can you partner with your government counterparts in achieving these issues? So, who hasn't gone fast this time? Let me begin with Lilian. Please give your last remarks and also in regards to that particular question.
Sorry, I was busy trying to answer questions on the chat.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Can David start while I get back?
No
myself?
problem, David. You go first again. Are you off? Ensure your mic is on, David.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. It's been a very interesting discussion, and I appreciate what you've been able.
You're disappearing midway. David. We are losing you, David. Let's try with Jane. You can go first. You'll come afterwards.
Okay. Yes, partnering with the public sector, we are doing that actively as SOCA. We belong to KEPSA. We have a platform called ASNET, where we dialogue constantly, regularly with the government on emerging issues. We are in the process of actualizing a lot of the extension policies that government is coming up with. We are participating in the policy development. We are participating in the forums that they are coming up with in partnership with the development partners. So in the end, we hope to come up with a hybrid system where it is, as I mentioned, the public-private partnership, which is the only way this will work. Because again, as I mentioned, extension is a public good. It has to have public input, but it is the private sector who will offer it, and they offer it efficiently. So yes, there's a lot of collaboration between private and public sector at the moment.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Oh, thank you.
Is David back, or should we go to Nekesah? Probably. Nekesah, you're free to chip in on that.
Yeah, I support Jen on the PPPs. I think public-private partnerships are the way to go. And I would take the case scenario. If we work as PPPs where we are getting research, research is in jargon. Farmers do not understand this. If we take this research and as agronomists, we're able to understand this research and break it down for the farmer to understand it, such that it's understandable for the farmers to actually digest it and utilize it on farm. I think that's the way to go. Let's look at partnerships with research institutions, with higher education institutes, with the ministry as well, because it's the only way we can increase the number of extension service out there. Private companies are offering it, but I believe if we work together with the Ministry of Agriculture, whether at the headquarter level, or at the county level, that's the only way we can actually get the information out to the farmers, and in the simplest way we can, in the simplest form that they can understand.
Thank you very much. Lilian, are you okay now?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think I agree with all the panelists. Partnerships are definitely the way to go, both private and government. I mean, with the input providers, we have to work with the government a lot. And there are many organizations over there that we have to work with. I like what Jane said about policies being in place. that will determine that we give the right information to the farmers, because there's a lot of noise going out there. And so I believe we need to find a way to be able to give the right information and uniform information, which is a hard task to do, because we all have our own agendas and all that. But if we can have a way of channeling the right information, the basic right information to the farmers, I believe that would be a good start.
Thank you very much. Ndegwa, I believe
yes,
your connection is back. Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good, thank you. The panelist belongs to SOCA, and what Jane said about our partnership with different organizations, including government, that is something that is ongoing. Then there are other things that we are doing individually, like I'm very active on Facebook, whereby I try as much as possible to educate my followers on things to do with the good agricultural practices and what they can do to improve their production. Mainly as we try to make farmers love farming and also practice farming as a business. We have a role as agribusiness to ensure that we are pulling more and more into this important business. I would say that farming is something that is very interesting, because as other areas are shutting down, farming is opening up, population is increasing. We are being called upon to increase production so that we can be able to feed Kenyans. There are more jobs and more jobs that are opening up in farming. So for those who are there waiting and looking for jobs, get into farming, but you have to do it right. I would say that it's a bit regrettable that whenever somebody wants to go into any game, he or she starts by learning the rules. But in farming, they want to learn the rules when they are already in, and getting the rules through experience, which sometimes hits them very hard. Thank you.
Yeah, quite insightful comments there from all of you. May I take this time to congratulate SOCA for the great work that you're doing, coming together in a big way to address issues that, though everybody knows is the solution to most of our problems, they tend to downplay. And you coming together and emphasizing on the importance of these issues put you in a very important position in saving the country as a whole, jobs for the youth, food security, and the economy as a whole. So thank you so much, Bwana CEO, for giving me this opportunity, Rikki Agudah, and the role that you play there. I would like to thank our panelists, beginning with David, an expert in agronomy and production sector, Nekesah, an economist and value addition expert, Jane, who is an expert in market access. I won't mention all of, I know you, the CV is long, but time is much gone. And last but not least, Wanjiru, who is a soil scientist and matters fertilizer. Thank you very much for that, the important work you're doing and the insight you've given us, particularly tonight on this webinar. I believe our participants, who we are gracious to have, we are very thankful to you. I believe that you got yourself a portion that you can implement. You can follow up on these issues, whatever you didn't understand, and try as much as possible, because when you take it upon yourself to implement these things, the next person will do the same and the whole country changes. You don't wait for a next person to implement before you can do that. Do what is doable at the moment as we push the government and push other players to do their part. So I would wish to thank everybody and wish you a safe stay. Stay safe, sanitize, and be blessed.
Thank you.
Rikki, you have a word?
Yes, not to say too much, but thank you very much, Anita, for taking this very able panel through today's discussion. We deliberately started with a very wide coverage just to let our participants know in terms of the breadth of expertise that is within soccer, but we shall then successively be narrowing down and opening up the space with those individual aspects so that we can actually exhaust all the questions. Our wish is to use this platform to educate farmers and to actually bring other experts on board so that farmers start to get the right information and we can be a value add in supporting agribusiness towards achievement of food and nutrition security. I want to acknowledge the team, the soccer team that is working on this concept and has been building it up. And some of our panelists are part of that team: Lilian Wanjiru, Nekesah Wafullah, and Angela Limo, who's not a panelist but is a powerhouse in the organizing of this particular webinar. We shall circulate links and information for the next meeting, and these events will actually be happening every Friday. So we will keep you updated on the topics for next Friday, and we look forward to having everyone who is on board with us today joining us. Please spread the word, share your questions. We'll get in touch with us. We've put the email contact there that you can reach us, and then we can connect you to the individual panelists who are all members of the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors. Apart from that, I wish you all a good weekend, and just echoing what Anita has said, let's observe those precautions even as we are hopeful for a good outcome, and let's support our farmers to keep flowing to the table so that this country stays healthy even as we combat this particular pandemic. So thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Panel